What's up, everybody?
Welcome back to Second Cup.
Let's fill up your cup with something good today.
I like that.
We're trying it out.
I like that.
How about you guys put taglines in the comments down below?
That sounds like a fun idea.
Let's find a good one.
Today we sit down with the wonderful duo, Josef and Ashley Newgarden. Josef is a two-time Indy 500 champion. I grew up going to that race. I've been probably 25 times, if I had to guess.
Yes.
And he tells a story of how he met his wife, Ashley. I'll just tease it, at Disney World.
Yes.
Pretty great story.
And then their dynamic within the racing world, going from young dating while he's racing to now having won the Indy 500 back-to-back.
Traveling the world. But the reason for our sit down was because they just wrote a book. It's called Josef's Big Dream. It's an Indy 500 story, and it's pretty cute. We got the kids reading it. There's fun pictures. The storyline is great. Kind of follows Josef's life and Ashley's role in it, and I just like hearing their dynamics. So I was grateful for their time. Josef and Ashley, thank you, and thank you for listening. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the show. And if you want to learn more about these two, we'll link their information down below. But without further ado, let's roll into it with Josef and Ashley Newgarden.
We were trying to remember, when is the first time any of us met?
Was this like a year and a half, 2 years ago? When was when was the first game night that you guys had? Because it was basically around that time, I think.
No, but didn't you meet Andrew through
The ping pong.
Yes.
I think it's
But
through
then,
the ping
was
pong
it
tournament.
ping pong or the Hy-Vee race that came first? This is our
pong,
debate.
because then it was,
This is what I
Definitely
said,
ping pong
Ashley.
was before the Hy-Vee
Yes.
race.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
and then it was a coincidence that you were there.
Yeah, or I shook your hand and you're like, we're neighbors. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
How do you know
Who's
that?
this person?
I'm pretty sure we did the ping pong tournament
He
first.
thinks ping pong was
This
first.
is right, because
I
I
think so,
brought
too.
John Chris to that ping pong tournament
Yeah.
the first year I did it, and we had a
Oh,
near
yeah,
miss.
yeah.
We lost to you and
And then you cheated
Ted,
and
is
brought
that his name, your
professional
cousin?
Yeah,
tennis
my
player
cousin
the
Ted.
next year.
Ted Taiwan.
No,
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Ted. And then the next year I was like, I'm gonna win this thing. So I brought Ryan,
A
and that's when we
professional
got
tennis
it,
player,
and we
which
won the
is
belt,
cheating.
the whole thing. Not that the
It's for
results
charity,
don't matter.
but like it's still competition.
Oh,
I
it's
get it.
100%.
Like any great athlete, you have to level up next year, you know?
Yeah.
Know your weakness.
100%.
Outsource.
Well, as soon as I saw how competitive Josef was with it, I was like, okay, this is not fun and games. I am here to win. And sure enough, last year you didn't have the thing, which I was a little disappointed.
Hold on.
But
Did you
I'm
train
still,
to be a professional ping pong player?
No.
Table tennis?
Okay, but be
No.
honest, you did have.
Yeah, no. So it's a little bit of my family.
Okay.
My grandfather was really big into ping pong and was like kind of in the industry. He created like a like a tennis pitching machine, but
Yeah.
for table tennis.
Table tennis?
Yeah,
It's called
so
Robopong.
yeah, it was
Wow.
like an old. So there's a big backstory in my family about
Yeah.
it. So that's how I knew about ping pong and table tennis. But no, I was always into racing. So it was
Okay.
kind of just a side thing that I'd
No, but
always
you
known
did have
about.
a little coach that was.
Yeah, but this is like a long time ago. Like
No, I know, but when he was
He
a
can't
kid,
share
his.
this with the ping
Wait,
pong
say
tournament.
Oh, sorry, sorry,
Give us
sorry.
the inside
I've already
scoop.
overspoke. Cut it.
I also started racing with scooters. Okay, so that I have a lot of weird backstories.
Yes.
Yeah.
You raced scooters.
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. So I'm from Hendersonville, just north of
Yeah.
Nashville, right? And like racing was not a thing. Like people, you either played basketball, baseball, even gymnastics would have been
Yeah.
way more normal than racing cars. So I was like, can I just get a go-kart or something? My parents didn't want to do that. I ended up getting a scooter from like a next to a barber shop at a
Yeah.
skate shop. And then I figured out how to race these things. I was like 11 years old. And then I found out they were racing these on the West Coast. And I was like, Dad, can we go race
That's
these?
amazing.
That's how I started
It's a
racing.
motorized scooter though. Like
I was gonna
imagine
say, like a
scooter
razor
with like
scooter
Yeah.
or
little
like a...
motor on the back. I mean, he looked
It's very silly.
like elbow pads.
Yeah.
and
Oh,
everything.
nice.
It was very silly. So then we stepped it up and we actually did something real with it, which is great. But it was a
Wow.
weird start.
First of all, did you do like a pregame pump for this interview? Why are you looking so vascular? What in the heck? Your bicep veins? What's the deal? What? Is this normal? Okay, no, my bad.
Last time we worked out, I think you crushed me in a workout.
Oh,
I was
oh
helping
my-
you.
So you had
I was
to get
helping you figure out
pumping in.
timing for a
Yeah.
workout.
I
Look at the competition.
forgot. We did do that. We
Remember
did
this?
Yeah, the CrossFit like trial workout together.
You had to hit like a WOD time, and you were like, "All right, you go first, so I can find out pacing for this thing."
Oh, dang.
Did he smoke you?
Yeah, he was much faster, but hey, look how much stronger he is than me. What do you weigh? Like 215?
220.
It's such a guy thing.
I know.
What do you weigh?
I
I
can't
know.
compete
Us,
with
we're
that.
like-
I'm 175. I can't compete with that.
Like,
Yeah, no,
Hold up.
It's tough. I would love for you both. We'll get into the book because you co-authored the book together. Is this both of your first book?
Yeah, and we did work with Red Racer Books. Andy, he's phenomenal. And so he
Okay.
kind of guided us the whole way with like illustration and really did write. We knew the idea that we wanted, but he was the one that really put out the story in a digestible way for children,
Our
which was really
4-year-old
nice.
signs off. She
Yeah.
reads it a lot.
Well, you don't realize how difficult it is to write a kid's book. Like,
Yes.
you know, to say things, sentences that flow rhythmically and just that don't lose the child as well. Like, it's really difficult. So you kind of really do need someone to come in and go, no, you don't say this word. You have to rhyme it with something. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
more difficult than you
And the
think.
illustrations are great.
Beautiful.
They're actually like perfectly descriptive for a kid
No.
because she was like following along. It was cute.
It's nerve wracking
cute.
when you make a book, especially, you know, it's the theme of the book is chasing dreams, right? Like, so that can be applicable to anything, whether you want to be like an Olympian or you want to be the president of the United States or you want to be a race car driver. But I feel a little awkward about it because it's about my career. So we're writing this book and I'm like, I have no idea if anybody's going to like this. But we had a lot of fun with it because our son Coda loves books. We read books every night. So we were pretty passionate about going through the process and thinking, okay, what is Coda going to like? What is he going to respond to? So we did put a lot of time into it and
Well,
pretty
I think
proud of
his
it.
story is not typical either. Like it's really, he did have to fight for. It's not like he fell into football at school and then he just really liked it and then he got a scholarship. Like the route to racing is so much different. So you really have to give up a lot of your childhood wants and wishes and hanging out with friends and things to sacrifice to chase that dream. So I think a lot of kids can see themselves in this story, which I think makes it different. It's not just about like, oh, Joseph got straight A's, Joseph did this. It's like, oh, well, a lot of kids want so badly to be the best or do this and this and this, and they can see there does have to be sacrifices along the way, which is really tough as a kid to at least, I mean, you know,
Oh, yeah.
through gymnastics, like you had to sacrifice so much, like probably school dances and
You had
just
to put
hanging out
your
with friends. And,
pro ping pong career on hold.
I mean, that's the
Couldn't
big
pursue that anymore. I loved it. The themes of making mistakes and who do you have to prove something to, I thought actually really resonated, and it's like an important message for kids too. I guess, is that a true story? You walking the track the night before the race?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a twist on it. So normally I'm not right on the track, but it's really fun. So at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we sort of lived there for 2.5 weeks, and probably the best part of our time is at night when there's no one there, and that place really is lit up. It's a huge facility, and it's got this like aura about it. And it's just us. It's like all the drivers living in the track with some of like the facility there.
and like a little bus lot.
It's so cool. Like it's very, I don't know. It's really beautiful. And we get to ride our bikes around the track sometimes at night. Like we'll ask the president of the
awesome.
track,
Wow.
and it's lit up. It's very, very cool. So, but the night before the race, I always go out to the turn one front straightaway, basically in the stands where people would be watching. And it's just really cool what I was trying to describe in that moment is actually what ended up happening. So it took me 12 times to win the Indy 500. And there's so much pressure to win the race that, you know, people look at you as like a failure if you don't ever win this. And at the end of the day, I like doing it just because I love being there competing with my team and I love the race. And so that moment is more about, you know, enjoying it and not having to have the pressure of winning it.
Well, I think
It's
the
a change of
pressure-
mindset, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the pressure started to, I mean, as it does for any athlete, I think, but the pressure for this race specifically started to pull him away from loving the sport as much because it felt like you can't love it unless you've had everything checked. So that year was a turn. I mean, I saw it where he finally just let go of that and said, regardless of the result, I still love this. And this is why I'm doing this, and kind of reminded himself of like home base. And I think that helped.
It's
all
a tough
around.
event. It's a lot of pressure. You know, of all the races we go to, this is the biggest one. You know, there's 300,000 people there just on race day. There's nothing like it. And there's this expectation that like is put on your back. You know, I could never imagine being like at the Olympics and, you know, thinking like I've prepared 4 years, 8 years, 12, my entire life for this moment. Right. And like, you just have to somehow find a way to perform in that one chance. Like you get one chance, right? And it's all this preparation up to that point. The Indy 500 is kind of like that for us. Like there's a lot of work all year for this one chance to hopefully get it right. And so it's hard to find a balance mentally to still enjoy why you're being there. When if you're a perfectionist like me, you just want to win the race.
So, two things.
Yeah.
I'm going it.
Okay, go ahead.
You do know what the Olympics is like because you just did it. You've done it many times. That's literally the exact feeling.
Yeah, but like at least they have the car noise. I can't imagine for you just the silence of.
Yeah.
Oh
that's
my
interesting.
god.
Yeah, I couldn't
But you
imagine.
also you get
Your
used to your
breath.
own. You get used to the like your own. I don't want to say like hum, but like you get used to the white noise that it becomes a sound. If that makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah.
And you get used to that. Second, I feel like it will sound less creepy if I say this rather than Andrew. So Andrew's born and raised in Indianapolis, and has been to every race you've ever raced in.
Probably 22 times.
Yeah.
I've been to Indy 500.
So
I
realize
didn't
you were
realize
there
you'd been
every
that.
year.
yeah,
that
it's like
many
a family
times.
tradition in his family to go to the 500,
So this is
and it's a whole thing.
yeah, sidebar story you did not ask for, but I'll share regardless. My dad had this beer can collection
Yep.
that started because of Indy 500. He started going when he was like 15, but back in the day you couldn't buy any type of beer anywhere. It was like you could buy Bush's or Bush Light from whatever, Milwaukee, but if you're in Indiana you can't have it. But the Indy 500, everyone would come in from out
Yeah.
of town and he'd like collect all these beer cans. So we literally, my basement growing up had 5,000 beer cans stacked floor to ceiling.
Only from the
All
500.
from the Indy 500.
Yeah.
And so it was like always this big thing. But it's like, well, it's the book is just really exciting to read for me just because I connected with it. The pagoda, I remember when they like built that whole thing. And then,
You know what
Do
is
you want to
crazy?
share that story? We can cut that.
oh, wait.
The pagoda.
Whoa, wait, no. And then we actually, that's when we first started dating.
Yeah.
We're missing
we
that
met
whole
at
part.
the 500.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, dude. I
No, you
totally
didn't.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you guys had some. You know what? I knew you were from
Yeah.
Indiana, but
Yeah.
it kind of like went over my head. Like most people, you talk about the Indy 500 anywhere in the world. If you meet
Yes.
people from Indiana,
Yeah.
like they just get it.
They get it.
Like you don't even have to explain the Indy 500 because
Yeah.
it's like I mean, it is a whole thing. It's part of the culture,
It is.
right?
The whole
And
month of May.
It's a
And
big deal. It's like a
Yeah.
really big deal if you're a Hoosier.
I mean, the
so-
fact that it's called the month of May and it's
Yes.
just a 1-day race.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So Shawn was the grand marshal for the May parade or whatever in Indy,
yeah.
which was a huge deal. And my dad sent a picture to the family. I don't even know if we've talked about this. He was
Yeah.
like, "Look, we had met one time before that, but he said, look who's the grand marshal," and she's riding down and in front of the whole parade. And then we were going to the race the next day, and I texted Shawn and said, "Hey, can we meet up?" And she like ghosted me for 10 months leading up to this. She just had didn't want anything to do with me. But we met out in front of the pagoda where she had like the nice seats. We were in the infield, but we met. She
Well,
fell
your
in
dad
love.
would buy tickets until the morning of every race. Which
We'd
really,
scalp them all.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress. I actually do want to dig into the pressure mentality of how you deal with that. I have gotten perfectionist vibes. I've had to play the role with Shawn of she's the perfectionist. I'm not at all. But like with performing or even parenting, how do you deal with that perfectionism? I remember playing cornhole and you were like, you could just tell that you wanted every shot to be exactly perfect. And I was like that until after my rookie year in the NFL, where I like literally just I crumbled under that mentality. And now we try to maintain this aspect and dynamic of like playfulness. It's almost like a family value, but it's like showing up, engaging in like a joyful, curious, active way. And that to me is how I try to, like, even in pressure situations, which we don't really have that many of, but like, how can you bring this dynamic of playfulness and it takes the edge of perfectionism away? That's how we've done it, but I'm curious how you all have.
I think we might need to adapt that a little bit. We're still in it.
I'm saying
Well-
you guys
Little
are
bit.
still in professional competitive.
But like, I want to interrupt really quickly because you talk to all of the greats, like, or even people that are just striving to be the greats, and they all have this. I call it OCD, but it's perfectionism. But it's a little bit like this control of their own destiny, which I think manifest in OCD and manifest in perfectionism, because that's the only thing that they can control, right? And if they can't control that, then what do they have? So I used to think it was his own little quirk, but then I see it in so many other people, which I think is very.
Well, so what do you do with that? Because that's not like, I know Shawn's perfectionism is, it's not like a joy all the time to like, wow, this is so fun that everything needs to be.
It's difficult. I mean, to be honest, it's difficult because he's still in his career as well.
Yeah.
I can imagine in retirement, there's a different, it maybe changes into different things and you can control it a little bit better, but it is a little difficult. I think we've really tried, especially when we had Coda, to pull away track is track, like racetrack is racetrack, and then home is home. And before, I think racetrack bled into home a lot more. And so we really try to separate those two, because when you separate those two, a lot of that perfectionism can go away because it's not so hyper focused on performance and results. But yeah, I mean, we don't have it all figured out.
I'll be honest, it was a very difficult transition. Like
After having Coda.
after having Coda, super difficult for me. It was very difficult. It was difficult for Ashley too. It's life changing for both of us, right? But just from my career aspect, I'm so used to being extremely selfish.
Yeah.
And you almost have to be. I mean, you know how this is. If you want to be great at what you do, you want to be the very best, you have to have these mechanisms in place where you know you can get the most out of yourself. And the way it worked for me was I could just shut off and I would cut whatever needed to be cut in any moment to like focus myself in on the next thing that's coming up, the next task. And I could like always get myself in line. And that was like a perfectionist thing for me. Like, and then when we had Coda, it was like, well, there's not, you can't do that anymore. It's just, it's impossible to like have a loving, and it's certainly a family that I want to have. I don't want to be that way in a family atmosphere. So it was like a total shift for me. I think it actually coincided a lot with winning this race. I mean, literally Coda was born just before winning the first one. And it's like the first time I sort of let go of, I have to win this race. Like there's one day I have to win it. If I don't, it's all for nothing. And I think that was one of the first years where I was like, it's I want to win it. Of course, that didn't change. I still love it just as much. But if I don't, I have to be okay with that. I kind of came to terms with the fact that it's like, okay, if I don't ever win it. And then it ended up happening.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny how it all lined up.
It's, he said something like, I can't have that process when I have a kid. I think people can. I don't think he wanted to, which is the difference.
Absolutely.
And because I was always like, well, whatever you need, we can do it. If you need to go stay in a hotel for a day when you get home and have your process. And he's like, well, I can do that, but I don't want to do that. And so it's been really, we're still learning. It's been difficult for him to adjust because your brain's saying one thing and then your body's like, no. Brain's saying like, just be chill. Like, it's cool. Like, you came home fourth. It's fine, And his body's like, no, must. So we're still learning. It's definitely difficult. But yeah, I think there's also a narrative with racing, and it's probably the same with every sport, especially with women. But like, once you have a child, everything's on the decline, And like, oh, once you have children, like that's almost a weakness because it's like, oh, well, your mind's somewhere else. But I think it actually for him has been a little bit different than that. Like, I think that having that escape for having a family and having a child has been a good break. Even though it is difficult in a lot of times, but
As you guys were both saying that, like doing the math of winning the 500 back to back, but only ever doing that after you had your son. I don't know all of your statistics, but would you say that like overall your career has gone up since having a son, and has that changed the stereotype of, or like the stigma around parenting within your sport?
It's such a loaded question.
Yeah.
We could be here for a long time talking about that because in an odd way, it's been this year has been really tough. It's probably been the toughest year of my career has been this year.
Okay.
But from an Indy 500 standpoint, it's been the two best seasons of my life.
Okay.
So I don't know that I would trade that.
Yeah.
Winning Indy is it's above everything. It's so difficult to do. So yeah, I don't know. I think it has been a journey of rebalancing for me the last 24 months, which in essence is rebalancing for both of us. Ashley's kind of just, she has lived the pain with me of racing, as I think anybody involved in like a high performing sport or athlete does. Like they just, I mean, I think this is how it is. I don't know if you would have to correct me if I'm wrong, but it like kind of all revolves around this person and like what they're doing, and like everybody's sort of, you know, they're just trying to be a part of like the process of making that all work. And I think in a lot of the, you know, I don't realize that so much when you're going through it. And then now having a kid, and I'm getting like a different perspective on it, like realizing how much everybody is, you know, sacrificing and just kind of there, and they're living in the emotion, whether it's good or bad. And I don't know, you just don't think about it as much when you're in it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Your take on what it takes to be great is that like sharpness. And I don't disagree with you, but I also maybe romanticize moments like watching Michael Jordan and like, you know, the flu game, or when he closes his eyes and like hits the free throw. And it's like, what does it take to be great is an interesting question to try to answer. But also you guys are dealing, the whole sport it's high stakes too. It's like, you know, you're talking about car wrecks potentially, you know, which is a big deal for anybody at any speed, and you guys are doing it at the highest kind of level. So it's like the physical tax that has to just however clean the race is, it's like there's tension. But yeah,
I don't know. I guess the best way to contextualize this, because we're talking about perfectionism, stats, all this stuff. Like the way my brain worked before was, okay, 4 Indy 500s is the most, 67 wins is the most, and 7 championships is the most. Okay, so I need 8 championships, at least 68 wins, and 5 Indy 500s. And like these are like just hard numbers that have to be hit, right? And now I look at it and I go, well, okay, like this.
If you get one of those, that'd be a great career. And
But
honestly,
it's
if you
not
get
even,
none of those,
it's
you have a
not
great
even
career.
that. Like my brain has shifted finally for the first time in my life, where I'm like, I don't have to just hit these hard numbers. And that's all. Like it was literally as simplistic as thinking it like that. Like my life revolves around these figures, and I either hit them or I don't. And like it's either you win or you fail. And it doesn't feel that way now.
Well, to your point about having that, I mean, I do think there's other routes to being great too. Like it's not just linear one way, but I think there's a lot of weakness in perfectionism, and it exposes you, because when you're on a high and you're on a roll, it's amazing. You've never been happier. But when one thing goes wrong, then you're like, okay, that's forgivable. When 2 things go wrong, oh no, 3 things go, and it can snowball really fast.
yeah.
So I think, you know, to address that and realize that that's maybe your weakness, that's where you can probably push on and be.
I always said within my career, and this is hard. So like I had a career where I was single, I was not married, I was not dealing with children, I was very young. So it was easier to kind of navigate that within my life. But I always said perfectionism was literally a drug. And trying to come off that drug after I was done with my sport was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Because learning how to not be perfect in a marriage, be perfect in dating, be perfect in your career outside of professional athletics, I was so lost. And it's just like this wild ride. I think it's a blessing that you've dealt with kids and marriage in your career, because I feel like you're already going through a massive transition of that without even knowing it. Like the fact that you're talking about a lot of that weight got lifted by having a son is really, really cool and really powerful. And I think it will make that a lot easier whenever that day comes. But it is when the perfectionism you need to obsess so much to get to that level is unlike anything that you deal with. And
It's almost becomes a coping mechanism as well.
for sure.
It's like, oh, well, if a weekend didn't go well, or like a match didn't go well. Is a match what they call that? That's not what they call it. Oh my gosh, that's so
A
embarrassing.
meat.
A meat. It was
Yeah.
him. Okay.
Yeah.
We're just watching the U.S. Open in all fairness. So
Yeah.
maybe my mind's there.
I call every sport the wrong thing.
Yeah. But like if the meet doesn't go well too, like your coping mechanism is the perfectionism, because you're like, well, let me focus on what went wrong. And if I focus and hyperfixate, it won't go wrong again.
Yeah.
So instead of addressing maybe, okay, well, this is why it went wrong, and then moving on, but the perfectionism is what you can control. So do you control that until the next race or
Yeah. How does that manifest itself in your marriage?
I mean, it's difficult.
Oh, in the past, like this is a good way to put it though. Like in the past, when something went wrong, like I had to live in it.
Yeah.
Like I had to live in that she couldn't make it better. Like
Yeah.
Ashley could not.
I tried.
It was like, you're gonna make it worse. If anything,
Yeah.
just let me live and stew in like what went wrong and be angry for, it used to be 24 hours is all I needed.
Okay.
But I
We've
had to like
also-
live in it and like really dissect it and understand every little piece of like why it went wrong. Even if it was something simple, like I'm
Yeah.
gonna stew on it for 24 hours. But I don't do that. I had to find a different way to sort of deal with that.
We've also been together for what, like 12, 13 years. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been together for a long time. So it's like the first beginning, I mean, even like 5 or 6 years, it was quite rough because he's also finding his footing in his career at that point too, you know? He was in it, but he's still like trying to prove himself to himself even. So that was very difficult. But I think over the last like 4 or 5 years, we've learned to work with each other on what we need. I think that's the biggest thing is, you know, you can get, especially in marriages, you can get way too focused on like what the other person does wrong and wanting to change that instead of I accept him for that. Like I know he gets moody after a bad race and I'll never be like, you can't get moody because that makes me feel bad. You just have to give him space. He's moody and then he'll come back. Like I think that was also a big learning thing for me was accepting, I wouldn't even call them flaws, accepting his traits for what they were and accepting it and then giving the balance.
It's almost like you're speaking different languages though, because it seems like whole operating system is like win and people like me, you know, and it's like, or that's even in the book, it's revealed. It's like I have something to prove to somebody, and then you get married or you have a kid, and it's like totally detached from that, you know, input output of no, you know, we're gonna be with you, Joseph, no matter what, no matter how you perform. It's just like a whole different kind of infrastructure to deal with to have people that are not associated with your outcomes. Anyway, go ahead.
I'd say this is something I learned. I'd be curious where you are with Coda on that. That was my operating system when I competed. Was like even when we started dating and getting married, after I retired, I had this operating system of I had to perform in order to either be loved or like be liked or respected. It was always performance driven until I had kids. Because it was almost like what I was teaching my kids was such a harsh realization of like what I didn't believe myself. But our kids will do something, make mistakes, whatever it is. And they're like, oh, and they'll start like cowering in almost as if they aren't loved or they aren't accepted. And being able to remind them in real time of like, I could care less what you do. I will always love you. I'm curious if that's helped like that dynamic of perfectionism, or if it's still you're just way too in the thick of it, which totally understand.
I would say it's different, at least my experience with it, because racing is so financially attached.
Yeah.
It's like a really weird sport in that I think I built a operating system in that racing is like the lifeline. It's like the bloodline for everybody. And I looked at it as more like a protection thing, where it's like I'm protecting everybody if I'm performing. If I'm performing, it protects everybody. And so then it became like a necessity almost. It was like I have to make sure that this is going right. And so anything else that has to fall or crumble around it to make sure that that's going right is like the sacrifice that I have to make. And so, you know, then when I have a kid, it's like it's not that that went away, but I definitely had to change. So I didn't change because of that reason. In an odd way, that almost got worse.
Yeah.
Because now I'm like, oh, I have my son, so
Another responsibility.
that's another responsibility.
Yeah.
This really has to go right. But I had to find a balance. So it was different. It was definitely different for me. But it's a complex sport. It's such a we could talk about it so long. It's such a weird, intricate sport to get involved in.
But I think maybe, and I don't want to generalize, but maybe women feel differently about that because like for me having a kid, and I can't even imagine having a daughter, I would love to, but it's a direct mirror of what your insecurities are, right? Because if they see it, you can say all day long, we talked about this before, you know, if you say, okay, Coda, it's okay to lose. And then every time Joseph loses, he comes home and he's mad, but he's saying the words, it's okay to use or okay to lose. He's going to see the actions more than the words. So like, you do have to be a mirror of what you want. So when you see those insecurities in your children, you automatically go, oh no, is he seeing that for me? Like, oh, now I have to change. And that's really hard.
That's more the trigger for me, which is really, that's a good point. Like I think of that more now with Coda. Like I want to display what I want him to see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
You
it's
can't just
true.
say
It's
it.
so much more than your words. Like
can't just
they
say
pick
it.
up on your actions.
Be
I
a good
find.
person. Be nice to people. It's like all these things that you could say all like a whole manifest list of
Yeah.
the points that you want, but it's really like what you live is what they pick up on. So it's very difficult.
Yeah.
I have more questions.
Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going. This is. I
Okay.
mean, I'm loving
Not
it.
to go
Thanks
down
for
a
coming
rabbit
to the
hole.
group therapy
Yeah.
session, by the way. This
No,
is
it's great.
People are gonna watch this and be like, I've never heard
He's
Joseph
like-
talk like this.
He's like, I came to talk about the book, not my freaking.
This could be opening up sensitive topics. So if we don't want to go here, shut it down. Talking about your career and feeling like it is a lifeline because it's financially driven, probably value driven personally, all these things. But it keeps your family afloat. It is your job. It is your career. How do you manage within your marriage, within your family, looking at Coda? How do you manage that thought of this will not last forever?
This is another thing that the perfectionism comes into because I'll answer a good amount of it at least. He's very focused on protection always. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in, money is protection and success is protection because that affords you money. And it's a whole ecosystem. And so he's always very focused on, it's not like some athletes really focus on the years that they're active and they're like, this is just all I live for and I'll just make this money, whatever. He's already looking 5 years past retirement and thinking, okay, well, let me set up my family and let me set us up for this so that when this does happen, we're not just afloat being like, well, what do we do now? So that's where a lot of the perfectionism comes in too, because he's focused on his career, yet he's already focused on his retirement. And then he's already focused on the next thing.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a tough question. Because racing was so pivotal for me for such a long time, and the most important thing was like, that someone opened the door for me. Like basically, like it goes back a long way too. It's a lot about my dad and my mom, and it was like they gave me an opportunity. They opened the door. They're like, here it is. You got a chance to do this. Like the last thing I wanted to do was squander it. Like I was like, I'm going to maximize this to like the nth degree. And there's so much unknown with that. Like if I get in a bad wreck my first year and that could be, it could have been disabling where like I couldn't race ever again. So there's no known quantity to it, but that was the first thing for me. And then it's almost gotten easier, that part, as far as like my comfort outside of racing, because the last few years, especially having Coda, like I've found more breadth to me as a person. And I used to just have that as like, I'm just a race car driver and I'm either successful at it or not. And that's the only thing that's going to matter and bring us security and all this. Now I don't feel that way anymore. So that part doesn't bug me. Okay. But the perfectionist part with the success within it is where I still struggle.
I have a question for you though.
Okay.
Because I'll turn it on you.
Okay.
I mean, retiring at such a young age, like I can't imagine at that same age. I mean, when did you retire? What age were you?
19.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you were at least in your 20s, which
19?
is crazy.
19.
But to have that much success, there was actually a golfer that talked about this. He said, I wish my success came later because life after is much more difficult. And you seem like you have it figured out. I know you probably don't have it all figured out, but you guys really have created something outside of that. And you do feel like you've figured it out a bit. But that must have been such a hard transition at 19. Like you aren't even fully, I mean, you're an adult, but you know what I mean? You're still a kid.
It was a blessing and a curse. So it was a curse because I hit the peak of like success in the public's eye at 16, which is when I competed, and then tried to do it again, retired. So trying to live up to people's expectations of me were no longer possible at the age of 19 because I was not going back to the Olympics. So trying to deal with that almost disappointment in myself and like what I thought the world thought of me at such a young age was really difficult. So it made it really hard for me to try new things because if I wasn't immediately good at them, everything was like, well, you're an Olympic gold medalist. You should be good at it. And so I felt very paralyzed to like even move forward because I didn't know what to do. The blessing of it was I still was looked at as a kid. So I had more grace from the public of I got to kind of wander around life for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, trying to figure myself out. And people were like, well, you're still just a kid.
Yeah.
But then I had to like rebuild everything. I think when you're older, you have more foundation that you can kind of work off of.
That has to feel like
Yeah,
such a
totally
different
different.
life. Like you lived a life
Yeah.
up to 19 and then you
Yeah.
lived a totally different life.
It's separate
after that.
life. Separate life.
So crazy.
Yeah, that's actually probably the other fortunate thing about racing is you're exposed to so many different facets of business within
Amazing.
motorsport
Yeah.
that you almost have a degree in it.
That's
But
amazing.
especially if you have if you're lucky enough to have a long career for 10 plus years, you leave it with all this knowledge and infrastructure like in place to where you could transition to something else much nicer. So I think that's a blessing from our side for sure. That's helped.
And when you're, hopefully we still have guys in the IndyCar that are 40 plus. So when you retire at 40 plus, it's still very young. But you're like, I lived a good life. I did it. But like at 19, you probably don't even feel, even if you were financially set up, you probably don't feel like you've done enough because you're still so young. 60, 70 more years, like it's crazy.
It was a long learning process.
Yeah.
Hear me when I say this, though, because you don't feel it, or I didn't when I was a athlete. And I try to actually work on this with my friends who are athletes, is like, rest assured, you do have other qualities that can make you money outside of your sport. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and it feels like, oh, as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to have $0 coming in. So I better be able to live off of what I'm making now. But it's like, that's just not true. So
And value.
Yeah.
You have so much value outside of your sport.
You said something really interesting though, because this is how my perfectionism. I struggle with it. It can almost make you procrastinate because like you have to be excellent at something, or it's like, why are you doing it? You know, especially coming from your craft where like every detail, like you have to be excellent at it. Otherwise I can't do this then. What am I don't know what to do if I'm not excellent at it, you know?
I literally found myself in a position. It was around the time when we started dating. I couldn't go play putt-putt with my friends. Like,
Oh no.
I couldn't go anything, literally anything. I would be like, nope, I'm good. I'm busy. I have something else to do. Because I was so scared of people's judgment of like, I expect you to be good.
Yeah.
And if I don't live up to that, I actually don't feel like I'm living up to what I'm supposed to be. And then this guy just broke me down because he'd be like, no, literally nobody cares. Let's go be fools.
I have such low standards.
No.
It's amazing. It's my best quality.
No, but I think that's what's beautiful about you having like each other and having your son is like you have that infrastructure in place of it really doesn't matter what the world says, even though it's really hard for like professional athletes to put that aside. But at the end of the day, your son and your wife are going to love you no matter what. So you have that built in, but it is hard to kind of put that aside and be like, I'm actually miserably horrible at golfing, and that's okay.
I also love how Andrew has like the least expectations, and he's also like the best at everything. Like he's like
Literally.
super multi-talented at everything he does.
He just hides his competitiveness way better than all of us. So
But he's
that's
just very
what it
good.
is.
He's very good at everything, but he's also like, it's not a big deal.
I'm just glad I beat him in ping pong. So I'm gonna rest on that for a long time.
He will live on that for the rest of his life.
Oh man, I would love for you guys to tell the story of how you met, because I
really
think
sweet.
about it often, especially when we're in Disneyland Paris.
Yeah.
Think about it often. I love that. We're in your home all the time. Well, it's a very weird story. It sounds fake, and that's why I always preface it before. I'm like, it does sound like a made-up story.
I don't know. I feel like people might think it's creepy. It's not creepy. It's
I don't think
It's not
creepy.
creepy.
no. What was I? I was 20.
Yep.
Yeah, it would have been 20. So it was like right after my rookie season, 2012. We went to Disney World with my family. It was actually my mom's birthday, just right around Christmas. We were there on Christmas Day. This was like a whole family trip to Disney World. We hadn't done this in a long time.
In Florida?
In Florida.
Okay.
It's been like 10 years. So we go and I set up a lot of the occasion. Like
Yeah.
I was like setting up reservations. I set up this dinner for my mom on Christmas Day. Christmas night.
It's at Cinderella's castle with all the princesses.
Cinderella's
and,
castle. Yep. I'm there. I'm 20 years old. And I was just like I was interested in who these princesses are. Like, especially they all came to the table, but there was one.
Okay, so Cinderella's castle, there's like 5 princesses. You go in, you meet Cinderella first, then you sit down at your table, and then 3, 4, 5 princesses walk up individually, and they sign your autograph books. It's really meant for children, but
It is.
families it's still cool too. And I was working Ariel that night.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So-
As in you were Ariel.
I was Ariel.
Yeah.
Yeah. That night, my friend had the shift on Christmas, and I'm from Georgia, and so
Yeah.
I had to work Christmas Eve. I couldn't go home for Christmas, and she really wanted to go home. So I'm like, oh, I'll just pick up your Christmas shift. Like, what am I going to do Christmas night if I can't go home? So I picked it up the day before too. I wasn't supposed
Okay.
to work on Christmas, but yeah. So I was Ariel that night.
So Ashley comes to the table as Ariel, and I'm like, who? I was very captivated by Ashley. I'm like, there's like 10 princesses around, but I was very interested in Ariel.
I mean, we talking like seashells and everything? Is this
No.
okay.
She had a very nice dress on that evening. Okay, it wasn't
was
the grotto.
modest. I
This
was
was not the
modest.
grotto
Yeah.
situation. No, and we had like a funny little back and forth. I was trying to throw her off her
Princess game.
Yeah, she was like, she's supposed to be
Break
in
character.
character.
Yes.
I'm like, I'm gonna get her to break character. And we were like talking about sushi or something. Remember
Well,
that?
his sister said something like, "I love sushi," and I'm like, "What the heck?" Like, why do
You
you
can't
say
say
that
that
to
to
a
Ariel,
princess?
yeah.
I'm shocked. Like, oh, my best friend's flounder. Like, are you kidding me? You're eating flounder? So,
yeah. So, but we had a really great interaction, and everyone at the table kind of knew
Yeah.
that this was an interaction that happened. But it's impossible to figure out like who she is as it should be. And so my dad paid the bill, and he put my information on the check and gave it to the waitress
Go
and said to
Dad.
give this to Ariel. So I didn't know this happened, right?
So this is where I'll step in for a second.
No. Let me keep going. Let me keep going.
Well, I want to see how I got. Oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
You wait. So I didn't know this happened, right? So we go
Okay.
back to the hotel room, and I'm like, I have to find out who this girl was. I was like so infatuated by her. So I'm like searching. I'm like, I'm gonna find a way. Like, I know how to do this. Like, I'll look up an inventory.
Google
and
aerial images.
No, I'll just be like, I'll somehow find the employees that work at Disney World. I'll find a way. Impossible. Like, you're just not going to figure out who this person is. And like an hour and a half later, it's like midnight in the hotel room. I receive an email in my inbox from Ariel. It's her. I swear. And I'm like, I was like, this is a job done. She's emailed me.
Wow.
I'm like, what the heck? So,
Wow.
so then we got together like 2 weeks later. I flew back down to Florida, and we went on a date, and it was great. And then I found out that my dad had left that information. I had no idea. I thought because I made the reservation. So I was like, oh,
He felt
she
so
looked
cocky.
up
He's
me.
like, wow,
She looked up my
I
email
pulled
from the
Ariel.
I was so happy. I was like, she definitely looked
Dude,
up
the
my
excitement,
information.
I'm sure when that email came through was like
Which is funny
electric.
for like a first date, you both feeling like
Oh yeah,
you're like
yeah,
really courting each other.
for sure.
and then it
then
was Dad.
Yeah.
Just Joey stepped in and
Oh,
helped.
but he loves that story now because he's like, man, I made it happen.
Uh-huh.
And then I had signed a contract with Japan, so I left 3 weeks after we met for a year, a little over a year for Japan. So we kind of had that like really crazy connection where you're like, you know, but you're still young, but you're like, man, I think I really love this person.
It ended
but
up
how
being
do you know it?
amazing though,
Yeah.
because you were over there for 14 months, and I had to go. I went to Japan like 3 times to
An excuse.
basically go and date Ashley, which was amazing. It was a really
So
cool
So
journey.
this
Coda-
makes sense why you guys go to Japan so much. And you
Yes.
love Japan.
And coda in Japanese means eternal happiness. So it's like, I mean, people probably are like, why is your kid's name Japanese? But it's a Japanese pool.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's
Love
very
that.
strange.
it's all intertwined.
I love it. Really
And you
cute.
guys met at the 500. So we're like, you love Disney, we love the 500. There you go.
Yeah.
What year was that you guys met at the 500?
13?
12,
No.
13.
It's the same
You always
year.
get
yeah,
yeah.
okay.
I think it's the same. I mean, we were
But there's some
Yeah.
parallels because I get a text the night of my birthday. This is our first kind of interaction from Shawn, who I'd not talked to, and it was like midnight of my birthday. It was the last text that I got. And I was like, how did she know it was my birthday? This chick is into me. And then,
I had no
Same
clue.
deal.
I had
Same
no
deal.
clue.
But then my dad bought a play. I said, I told my dad, like, hey, Shawn wants me to come out to LA. Should I? It turns out she had like a big drinking night with some friends and sent me a drunk text that just happened to be my birthday.
Hey,
and she
it was
accidentally
the intentions were pure. Okay.
accidentally invited me to LA, but my dad bought a flight. He's like, "You're going to LA?" So
Yeah.
I left class, and anyway, so our fathers
Wait,
played big
did you
roles.
actually know it was his birthday, or were you just
I had
being
no
cheeky?
Yeah,
No,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
You just nailed the timing on that.
it was literally like 12:00 something. Yeah.
You didn't know what to say, so you're like, "Jill, just say happy birthday to get
It
the
was like
attention."
me and girlfriends, and I was getting out of a relationship that was just one of those that like drug on too long. And my girlfriends were like, if you could go on a date with anybody right now, who would it be? And I happened to have his number from his brother. Very long story. He was an Olympic cyclist. And in the middle of the night, as I'm with my girlfriends, they're like, just text him. Just invite him to LA. Which he lives in Nashville. He was playing for Vandy. I didn't even know if it was possible. I said, come to LA.
We made it happen.
And then I fell asleep and woke up to I'm here. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Wait, no, you.
Yep.
Within like,
Yep.
No, it was like less than 8 hours. I was
Yeah.
there.
That's amazing.
I thought it was like, oh, I bought it for next week.
No.
Wow.
It was-
Nope.
yeah.
And then I was like, he was going to murder me. Yeah.
Sounds. It also
Oh no,
sounds
what have
creepy,
I
dude.
done?
It's so
I
funny.
love it. I love it.
When you look back on those love stories and like the context of, you can't really describe like, no, she was into me. I promise. You can't convince somebody of that.
No, it's true.
Not
And
a Disney
also the reason-
princess. It wasn't creepy.
Yeah, yeah, she was
I
into
know.
me.
It's
I
also
think.
just such an intoxicating feeling.
It
Yeah.
is.
Like you wish you could bag it up. Like of course I wouldn't trade it for anyone else. Like I want that over and over with
Yeah.
him. But that feeling of like it's infatuation,
Yeah.
but it's also
Yeah.
like admiration and love and all of these things. It's just so
It's the
like
best.
that's the drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
it's fun.
bump perfectionism. That's
Yeah.
the drug.
And then you had a challenge of trying to find the name. It's like, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You mentioned trying to tell Coda that it's okay to lose, and I think like it's been really challenging for me to describe and reflect like my beliefs. So like I would not tell our kids it's okay to lose, but it's like, hey, it's you
But
can
it
only
is.
control a certain amount of things, right? And so like, and you do a great job of this in your interviews. It's like, hey, the car, like that team did great today, and we did our best, but trying to communicate, control what you can control, and like some days you're gonna be the best, some days you're not. It's always such a fine line, and to me, it's actually been interesting. Have you gotten into Stoicism at all? I know it's kind of like a weird Stoicism, dude.
Stoicism.
I'm
I'm gonna be on an island over here. Yeah.
Is this like the world
I'm
is
on an
flat?
island.
No,
Okay,
no, not a
good.
conspiracy. It's essentially we can talk about that if you want, though.
Yeah, very good.
No, it's almost like a philosophical school of belief of like it's not about the result or it's not about the outcome. It's just about how you respond to whatever happens to you. Anyway, I would actually, I'm been into reading and I'm transitioning this back
He
into
reads
your
like a book a day. So
but it's actually
we get a
do you
new.
find the time?
We get a. Oh, don't know.
Is it in your ears? Are you like an audio, or are you like walking
While
around
he
with
sleeps?
I do both. Well, at night I'll do.
I don't
like
know.
dream learning?
No,
Yeah, is that like a term?
I
It's
listen
like
to
some
podcasts
Inception stuff
about-
right here.
Yeah.
It's a
This
whole
conversation,
thing.
I introduce a weird element
You
to
did.
this. Yeah, but anyway.
What do you think about Stoicism?
Oh, it's actually interesting from a performance standpoint because it's not about what other people think about you. It's not about what the result is. I'm trying to teach my kids like almost a Christian version of Stoicism where it's like, hey, you've been given certain talents and it's all about using those well. And however high that takes you or whatever accolades that gets you, that's great. It's like,
Did this involve Marcus Aurelius at all?
yeah, it does. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
because I saw some quotes on this with Stoicism. Now that you say that,
Like Ryan Holiday is a big guy that talks about this.
yeah, I think
and-
so. Because
Yeah.
it is like there's some really great learnings from this. It is very philosophical.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about now.
I'm into that, and I apologize for. I think
No.
No, but I think where you're tracking with that is exactly where I'm at.
Yeah.
Like that's from a simplistic standpoint, like this sounds so cheesy, but it's like don't have regrets. Like I think that
Yeah.
plays into like I'm going to be proud of you if you put everything you had into it,
Right.
and the result is going to be the result,
Yeah.
right? And can control what you can control, like
Right.
that. All that stuff is really true. Like you
Right.
can't. It's the way you respond. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm not into participation medals or any of this stuff. Like, I don't want to teach my kids, like, it's like everybody won today. It's like, that doesn't happen, but it is okay. Like, if you didn't achieve what you wanted to, but if you did everything you could
right
along that journey to make it happen, and you like have no regret for what your effort was,
right,
then I would be proud of my kids. Like, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
it's uncoupling the outcome from the effort. And there's another book called Mindset, which is like really good. It talks about how to encourage your kids of like, hey, it's not telling them you're smart, it's saying I love how you're so curious, you know what I'm saying? Because the effort doesn't have any cap, and it's also healthier to just talk about the journey as opposed to defining this person as smart or as a good racer, and then whenever they lose a race, it totally shatters their whole identity because it's like, I thought I was supposed to be a good racer and I lost, Anyway, what were you about to say?
No, I was going to say, I think that's a great point. This is like similar, but a little bit different. But I find it quite challenging. And he's only 2, so I haven't really had to deal with a lot. We were talking about like he's like 15, and I've like gotten him through some stuff. But I find it challenging navigating not solving all of his problems for him. So like when he does fail, saying like, oh, it's okay to lose. It's okay. It's okay. We're going to move past it. We're going to try harder next. Like just kind of letting him sit in stuff and figure it out. Like I find that it will only get more challenging. But that's really where I think a lot of the lessons go. Of course, you give them the great framework of like how to be great during challenging times, how to have great work ethic.
Right.
But it's more about like giving them the tools and then letting them apply them instead of leading them. Every time you lose, okay, go shake that guy's hand. Tell me you did a good job. It's like, okay, well, like he should be led from something inside from his tools to do that himself and not have us do that. Or, oh, don't be so sad. Like next time you'll get him. You're going to do it's just, that's what I find is a little hard. Because as a parent, you love your children so much that you just want to do everything for them. Like, I mean, I do it until I was 35 if I could.
think it comes back to the leading by example, though.
Yeah.
It's so powerful, right? Like, and more so than just the words, it's the actions. Like, they soak all that up so much. They're so smart. Kids are so intuitive.
You just said, don't say you're so smart, okay?
Kids are so curious and excellent at
I love how curious you are.
thinking. I love how they think.
No, but there is something to that as well, because I've heard like the attachment becomes from, oh, you're so smart, so they become afraid of not being smart. So the next time that they do a project at school and they come home and you don't say I'm so smart, they go, well, that was like the highest compliment.
Yeah.
So why didn't you say that this time? That must not be good enough. Oh no.
Right.
So yeah, there is a lot in that.
Or they feel like they need to cheat on the next test so that they show that they're smart, but then they don't actually learn the stuff and they prevent themselves from becoming smart. Anyway, I do love to read. Did you guys always want to be authors?
So I love creative outlets in this way. I love a story. Yes, I didn't want to do like, I'm not an adult author, for sure.
Yet.
But yet. I've got to find my niche. No, but I've always thought it would be really cool to have books. I mean, you can go into Target or whatever you get your books and you're like, oh, what are the actual lessons in a lot of these books? Sometimes they're just like, I mean, my kid loves one that's called Dragons Love Pizza. Like, and it really has no lesson.
Yeah.
But he loves it. So I'm like, okay, it doesn't always have to have a lesson, but how cool would it be to have books that you can frame it in the way you want to teach your children and be proud of that? And because instead of scouting books and going, okay, well, I would have said this a little bit different, like you can make your own lessons in the own way that you want to serve it and teach them in that way. So we've always kind of talked about that even before we toyed with a racing book.
That was sort of the premise behind this. This isn't like necessarily a super specific lesson. And to be quite honest, it's a little bit of like, it's a little bit of brand building because it's built around me as the character. So we knew that writing it, but I think the idea was this could be a springboard for, like you said, great teachings within books. Like if you want to create lessons like in journeys, then that would be so fun. This little character Joseph can learn all these lessons, but be applied in such a digestible way and probably in a nice way where kids can say that it's okay to go through these different journeys and learn these things. And
like this wasn't like an all-encompassing one lesson, but there's there's definitely lessons of making mistakes. There's teamwork. There's sacrifice. At the end of it, it's really coming back to just doing something that you love and not focusing so much on the outside world, thinking you should be a certain way. And you can apply that to anything in your life, whether you want to be a singer, whether you want to be, it's even if you just want to do chess at school and it's not cool, like you don't have to think about what other people think because you love this and you want to do this. So, there are a lot of lessons in that, but the racing was really, when he won the first 500, it was really a great opportunity. And his story was, the build up the year that he won was actually like, this is his 12th attempt. No one's ever won it past 12. Like, if he doesn't win it this year, then he never will, which is just some fluff they put on TV. But you hear it enough times and you really do start to believe it. And so after he won it that first time, it was a really good story to be able to put into a children's version and teach those lessons.
Also, the most iconic image ever of the wreath for you and your son.
Oh my gosh.
That was
It was very
incredible.
unexpected. That was so cool they did that.
So cool.
Well, so they kissed the bricks at the end of the 500. And the first year he won, he was too little. But now he was old enough where he could understand something. And he's standing on the bricks and everyone's taking photos. And Joseph kisses the bricks and he's kind of looking around. And we're like, hey, Coda, can you just come down here and kiss? And he gets on his knees and he kisses the bricks. So we all have like all three of us kissing. And
That's really sweet.
crowd went wild. It was so special.
That's really
So
sweet.
to have that, he won it twice.
I like to say I waited to win until I had
Absolutely.
our family and Coda,
Absolutely.
Is that do you get a ring for winning?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's
May
it.
I? Do you mind?
Yeah.
What? Don't put it on.
So this is actually not the
I
ring.
mean, if I can get it off.
Oh, it can.
This
No,
thing's
you
tight.
can put it on. So it's actually not the ring that he gets for initially wearing it. This was one of the ring. Well, you have no more of the history.
That's the original ring. Yeah. So,
That's sick.
like, if you talk to so Elio's the one that sorted me out on this too, because Elio knows he knew where to get the original ring. I think they started this one in the 50s, and like that's what all the legendary winners.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want the one they give you.
give you like a
want
Dawson's ring.
Yeah.
I want the real one. Like,
That's sick.
so I went and procured it. Elio helped me do it, and but yeah, it's like you see Mario Andretti or AJ Foyt, any of like the
So
greats.
cool.
That's
Sick.
the
That's
ones they're
awesome.
wearing. Yeah.
That's really
Sick.
cool.
And did I also see that you signed 500 copies at your...
We did. Yeah, we thought. Yeah, that's what we did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
500.
They asked me to do that. I was like, no problem. Like,
It's like
if
a
people want
marketing
'em.
pool. We're like,
Yeah.
okay, we'll get 500 copies. And then once the 500 were sold, he's like, oh, wow, I forgot that I actually have to sign them.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Well, if you're listening and you want to check out Joseph's Big Dream, we'll link it down below. Well done on the book. Congrats on
Yeah.
everything. Thank you for indulging our ridiculous questions.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so
And,
lovely.
also, no, I do have a bone to pick. We have to go to a concert together, whether it be you two or somewhere else, because I know you went with the Goldbergs, and I'm just waiting. Maybe we can make it a Nashville local concert
Yes.
or whatever. But anyway.
I love it. I mean, let's do it.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Deal.
What's your concert?
Okay.
Trio.
Deal.
Trio.
Guys, there-
Goldbergs can come too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
there's a place on Broadway that I should be their spokesperson. I call it Ralph's. It's not Ralph's. It's Robert's. And that place,
Roberts.
have you ever been there?
No.
No.
Anyone listening want to go on Broadway? If you want a good time,
What?
go to Roberts. It's not like it's not like
Yeah.
the big.
It's old school Broadway.
It's old school Broadway.
Still?
Like like it's a really small
Yes.
area. There's like a bunch of older men that just like swing dance, and so they'll just come up and just ask you for a dance.
Oh,
They'll
wow.
dance. There's like a banjo player. It is
Wow.
not what you would expect. It's like kept in time.
Okay.
It's worth a check out. It's the best
Okay.
place I've ever been. So I mean, we can go tonight. Let's go.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the time.
You guys
Yeah.
are so sweet. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Thank you.